Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Now, I came across an article that I thought was interesting, okay? Now, if you've been following the channel, I try to remain neutral, okay? I'm a boxing fan. I'm a fan of both Spence and Crawford. We all know their situation is messy. And for us, we suffer because the way things are looking, we may not get that fight. So this is the thing, right? I came across this article posted on the 4th of November. I read through the whole thing, and I was like, man, they point out some stuff that I think a lot of us are aware of, but they kind of bring it all together in one article. But there's some things they left out as well. So I'm going to read the article, but at the same time, I'm going to kind of fill in some of the gaps. But we know there are a lot of people out there who are ranking Crawford against the Coles. Understandably so, because after reading the article, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's kind of written a way to make Crawford look like the bad guy. But there's some things that Crawford has said in interviews, right? That he's gone on record and said that it makes sense, you know. And I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this before I even read the article, right? First of all, if you want to hit that super thank button and donate to the channel, that'd be much appreciated, right? But we're beyond that now. Crawford, his bad experience over there at Top Rank, that's affected him. And that affected this whole thing with fighting with Spence and making the fight happen. But at the same time, I also feel PBC, you know, it just depends on how you want to look at it. I feel like they really were in no rush to try to put themselves in a situation to where they no longer have any of those welterweight belts underneath their banner. And we all know Crawford wasn't trying to be signed to no damn promoter. So let me read the article and then we'll continue, okay? So if you guys want to go and read it, I'll put the link in the description, right? But it was posted up on the Insider by Alan Dawson on 4 November. And the title of the article is How the Biggest Fight in Boxing Fell Apart at the Final Hour, and where Spence and Crawford should go from here. Okay? So now Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence expected to happen, you know, early next year. See, that's the first thing that got my attention, right? They said it collapsed at the final hour. Remember, those guys are supposed to fight in November. So to hear that they were supposed to fight early next year, you know, that tells me that was a problem from the rip for Terrence Crawford. Because the man, remember, he went on record and said, now this is the thing, right? Crawford said he told him he wasn't going to be out in the ring more than a year. He was going to fight, right? This is what Crawford said he told him. But for some reason, PBC and the whole Spence team, everybody was planning on a fight date early next year. But Crawford goes on record and says everyone knew he wanted to fight this year, right? Okay. Insider took a look at how boxing's biggest bout died. It's unclear if or when it can be resuscitated. And I'm not sure it can because they have all these mandatories and Spence has to meet those obligations or give up the belts. Okay. Representatives for American boxers Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence Jr. have been in discussions for a welterweight super fight since the summer. You know, starting around June time frame. After Spence beat Ugas, that's when everything started bubbling. Okay, Spence called Crawford out. No roadblocks. Crawford was a free agent. Okay? But now remember, this is the problem. Crawford said something about having met with the BLK Prime guys around that time frame too. Okay? I'm not making anything up. This ain't my opinion on anything. There are things not listed in this article. So I'm just kind of filling it in. Okay? So supposedly negotiations start bubbling up around June, a little bit after June. But also at that time, Crawford said he had conversation with BLK Prime. So the fight would have determined the undisputed world championship at 147 pounds and perhaps the #1 fighter in the entire sport. I think that's fair to say. Crawford and Spence have so much pedigree that a bout between them would have been the most significant welterweight showdown since Floyd Mayweather swept Manny Pacquiao aside in 2015. Athletes and celebrities would have packed into MGM Grand Garden arenas, VIP seats in Las Vegas, and fans would likely have dressed to the nines, as the fight would have been a marquee event for the fighters, the city, and the sport. You better believe if these two would have got the fight on, people would have been showing out. It would have been lights, camera, action, red carpet type treatment. It would have been crazy. Spence went on record to say, "I want Terrence Crawford next after he finished your Dennis Yugas. That's the fight I want. That's the fight everybody else wants." We've been all wanting that fight for the last couple of years. Okay? Remember, Spence was saying he was the boogeyman. And then Crawford, remember, Bob Arum was right there. And Crawford said, "How you the boogeyman when I'm chasing the boogeyman? I'm chasing you. You can't be the boogeyman and I'm chasing you." Right? You remember all that back and forth? So later in the year, Spence said, "I think it's going to happen. I want to fight. Crawford wants to fight." Then Spence goes on record on October 5th. Okay? October 5th, he tweets, "Ish is happening next. All y'all need to know." So from June to October, Earl Spence is sending out tweets saying the fight's going to happen next. That's all y'all need to know, right? Because obviously some conversations, some dialogue, there's some kind of meetings happening, okay? But then who else comes out and sends out a tweet? See, this is where it's kind of crazy, right? Mayweather comes out and sends out a tweet saying that the fight is not going to happen. He says, "Believe me, if I say it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen." And that threw a lot of people off because everyone's trying to figure out if Spence is saying it's happening. Mike Coppinger is putting out tweets regularly, right, saying that the fight's going to happen. These are the tentative dates, trying to get Stanley Eunice on the undercard, right? Those are all things that were happening. And Mayweather comes out and just kills all that. Okay? So that's October 5th. Spence says that. Spence, Crawford, and Premier Boxing Champions boss Al Heyman all wanted this fight to happen. A key source with knowledge of the situation told the Insider in October. But after almost 6 months of negotiations, the deal is now dead, and it's unclear when or if it will be resuscitated. So what went wrong? Two sources with knowledge of the Crawford versus Spence negotiations told Insider in June that discussions for the mega match were underway and November was a likely month for the event to take place. That's what Coppinger tweeted, right? And that's what everybody was running with. With no official announcement in October, Insider checked in with those sources again, and at that time we're told the fight will get made. Lines up with the timeline. Despite the protracted nature of discussions, organizers pushed the fight from November to early 2023 so that they could promote the match sufficiently. See, this is the piece here that, what's his name, Crawford didn't say this part. And this is, it makes sense. But at the same time, this article isn't talking about what Crawford wanted. Crawford said this kept dragging it out. I personally, I have to make an assumption here because, Crawford talks in code sometimes. Maybe that's what he means by they kept dragging it out. By, instead of the fight happening in November, then they want the fight to happen early next year. So if they wanted to push the fight back to January, February, so they could line it up with 3 to 4 months of promotion to help improve the chances of the fight really catching fire and transcending boxing to become a mainstream talking point across sports, right? It makes sense. So when Crawford says they kept just dragging on and BSing, and Crawford saying, well, I'm telling them, look, I need to fight this year. That explains some of the problem. Is Crawford, when you look at that, that sounds fair to me that PBC wanted to make sure they marketed this fight the right way, promoted this fight the right way. Now, for Crawford, it's also fair for him to want to go and fight because of his inactivity. The man would have been out the ring over a year, like 14, 15 months or something like that, if they fought in, February of 23. But there's something else that's not being mentioned here, because for me, my question is, all right, so they want to push the fight from November to February, something like that, right? Why didn't they start pushing the fight, promoting the fight for this year? And I'm going to tell you, because I think the money dried up over there. I honestly think that. I honestly think they were concerned that they wouldn't make the kind of money they wanted to make. And so they figured, instead of forcing it to where maybe the stars don't line up financially, let's just push it back. Now Crawford's saying, he told them, hey, I need to fight this year. And I think they felt, well, you know what, we're still going to plan to try to make the fight with Crawford, but let's just go ahead and push it off and then come to the table and say, well, this is kind of what we're looking at. But Crawford had already been working a damn deal with the Vanessian. You see? And I understand what Crawford's doing. He's got a family. We get it. But that could be kind of frustrating, man, to be trying to work this fight, biggest fight probably of this era, right? And you got this guy who's been talking to this other promotional outfit since like June or July. He's out here, working another fight at the same time while trying to see what's going to happen with you all. And I understand Bud's frame of mind. He's like, okay, I want the Spence fight, but it's looking like it's going to keep dragging on. So I'm going to go ahead and take this fight right now. These guys here. And the thing about BLK Prime, right? Let me tell you what attracted Crawford to him. From what Crawford knows about BLK Prime, and when you hear him, these are his words, not mine, that's the kind of platform that allows the boxer to get the lion's share of the money. They remove the middleman, and that's what he's looking for. So him and BLK Prime are forming a partnership. His fight is just a one-deal situation, but it's more of a partnership that they're trying to build. If it works out, they'll talk, and he may continue doing kind of one-off deals with them, okay? The other thing with Crawford does not want to deal with any promoters, meaning he doesn't want to be signed to nobody. He said maybe a one-fight deal, maybe a two-fight deal. He was like, but everything, the stars basically have to line up for him to do that. But he's not looking into getting any multi-fight contracts with any promoters. He's like, he's done with that. The point he's at in his career, he just doesn't think it's a wise career move for him at all. And he feels that all fighters, once they get to a certain point, they should all do like him and become their own man and cut out the middleman and get their money. That's what Crawford said. So when you look at the move he made with a Vanessian, and the fact that he doesn't have to deal with promoters and he's going to these people who kind of let him do what he wants to do, it kind of makes sense of how he kind of lost sight of, okay, I got one belt. I'm about to fight this number six ranked guy. Instead of waiting a couple months and fighting for 3 belts, going on this massive promotional tour and making they're going to talk about the money here, and making a gang of money. So when a lot of boxing fans are looking at this, they're saying Crawford was stupid. You know, they're saying he was stupid. But at the same time, I will say this, right? I'm not defending him. I think he did what was best for him. But this man has 4 or 5 kids, got a family. Who knows what else is going on in this man's world where he's like, I got to make a decision. You know what I'm saying? Who knows what this man talks about? He has real estate, he has this, he has that. Who knows how those investments are doing? You know, I'm not jumping into his pocket. I'm just trying to give it a different look from a different perspective. You know, maybe he had to do that. I don't know. But I do know that he should have at least, the communication on his part could have been better. And he should have at least let them know, hey, well, I'm talking to these other guys too. You know, you got to be transparent. He wanted transparency. This article is going to talk about it, but Crawford, to me, should have been more transparent. And that, I think, is foul. I think that's foul. You know, nothing wrong with having a plan B, plan C. But at least let the people know, hey, this is my #1 priority. But this is what I'm looking at. If y'all, we can't make this fight happen this year. I'm telling you, this is the direction I'm going. He didn't do that, and I think that's foul. So, Crawford, according to sources involved with the fight, wanted transparency regarding finances, including how much money the event generated to ensure his purse percentage, payment, was an accurate reflection of the fight's success. Now that right there, that just tells you that Crawford, he's just had a horrible experience at Top Rank. For the fact, and there's nothing wrong with wanting transparency on the finances to make sure that the money generated and his purse percentage was going to be spot on. Nothing wrong with that. But this is good business on his end, but also he had a bad taste in his mouth when it comes to his money. And he wants to make sure that everything that he's supposed to get, he gets. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But it's crazy. He was going to get transparency throughout, a source told Insider, adding that Crawford made an unusual request to also oversee the marketing expenditure for the show. A boxer usually does not get involved on this side, as the focus is to train and to fight, rather than to sign off on, say, $200,000 worth of expenses that could include things like press tours, free airline tickets for fighter teams, and so on. According to a source with knowledge of the negotiation, PBC nevertheless agreed and sent Crawford an updated contract after granting his final request. And this is where the problem is. Crawford never responded because Crawford had already signed a deal to fight Evander. And see, and that's foul. That's foul. And he should have said something. He should have said something. Now, for everyone saying, well, Crawford has a family, and I agree with you. But this boils down to communication, man. It boils down to communication. It's just like if I go out here to buy, I'm going to buy this person's house. We get a contract, right? And then there's a little clause in there that says, you know, contingent on X, Y, and Z. Say I want the roof replaced. The buyer says, okay, hey, let me know what you want. I say, I want the roof replaced. And then they never get back to me. And they just go to the seller. The seller says, okay, and I give him a contract. And then they just go to another buyer and sell a house to him. But no one comes back to me. And I'm like, hey, what's up? I'll tell you I'm interested in the house, man. It's just the contingency here. At least let me know something. But you just go, you could have said, hey, I don't want to pay to fix the house, but this person will take the house as is. All right, no problem. But just leave me in the cold looking stupid. And that's what Crawford did. That's horrible. It's almost like when he was saying, hey, you guys want me to fight with Spence? Okay. Well, these are the things here that I'm looking at. These are the contingencies. I'll do it, but I need X, Y, and Z. They come back and say, hey, all right, we'll do it. But instead, you go out there now and you get another house. That's what Crawford did. And that's just not cool because still, really, he should have been contractually obligated. But, you know, he was smart not to sign some of that stuff. But why have them go back and forth like that, and you're just going to move on? It's foul. But this is where they're getting the BLK, right? Instead, he announced an alternative deal with the niche platform called BLK Prime, and said he'd be fighting David Avanesian in December. That's crazy. Prior to acquiring Crawford, BLK Prime had been broadcasting glorified club shows. Despite annual revenue of $5 million, according to Zoom Info data, BLK Prime provided a $10 million guarantee to Crawford. The secondary deal blindsided Spence and PBC staff, according to two sources familiar with the negotiations. Nobody saw this coming, one source said. PBC expected the fight to get finalized and had no idea Crawford was really working on a secondary deal. Insider contacted representatives for Crawford on Thursday, but did not receive a reply. Crawford said in an Instagram live video this week that representatives from two unnamed hedge funds reportedly wanted to pay him $25 million to Spence $25 million as guarantees for the super fight. This, of course, everybody says sounds like crap because he talks in code. He won't give any specifics. Crawford said he presented this offer to Spence, who reportedly inquired about the back end, meaning the money that could come should the fight prove successful at the box office, something that's not known until after the conclusion of the show. Insider confirmed this mystery offer with two sources close to negotiations, who said it was rejected on account of it being from an unidentified party. I've said, and I still think it, goddamn, if it's not the Irish mob and damn Kinahan, gotta be Warren Buffett. If it's not Warren Buffett, not the Irish mob, I don't know who it is. But everyone's gonna sit here and just be pulling straws out the air, trying to figure out who was gonna provide this $50 million, because Crawford won't say anything. There it is, communication problem again. He's got to get out of this habit of playing these damn games, you know, like that's, who wants to deal with somebody like that? You know, that, and you can't do business that way, all right? So right here, who said it was rejected or copy it? So from an identified party. So they didn't want to deal with that crap because it was an unidentified party. He wouldn't say who it was, with no indication of how the fighter would be compensated if the pay-per-view sales were significant. Pay-per-view sales matter. Check this out. One source who was close to the Mayweather and Pacquiao negotiations said Pacquiao's representative at the time, Bob Arum, laughed off a flat offer of $42 million. According to this source, the top-ranked boss was aware of how big the payoff at the back end would be. That's why the back end matters. Check this out. Pacquiao went on to leave the ring $72 million to $76 million richer and receive an even bigger check later when the pay-per-views were tabulated to show a record 4.6 million U.S. household purchased the event. That doesn't mean that Crawford and Spence are going to do 4.6 million. But watch this. Heyman did not think Spence or Crawford should cap themselves at 25 million, the source said. Kind of makes sense when you think about what happened with Mayweather and Pacquiao, how much money they made. And then when you think about just 25 million for Spence and Crawford, could be a whole lot more on that back end, right? A third source, one who has knowledge of the pay-per-view business, pointed out Jake Paul's recent 8-round win over Anderson Silva, which reached up to 300,000 pay-per-view sales on Showtime. Though this figure is reasonable in today's tough pay-per-view market, it fails to touch big-name boxers Canelo Alvarez or Deontay Wilder, the American heavyweight who fought a trilogy with Tyson Fury. The difference between Jake Paul and Spence and Crawford or Wilder Fury is that the latter two fights represent significant sporting competitiveness with athletes at or near the peak of their boxing powers, the source said. If a Spence-Crawford fight mirrored the popularity of Wilder Fury 3, then at a $90 price point, it could have generated approximately $67.5 million, more than the alleged combined fees offered by the mystery hedge fund. So, if Spence and Crawford, so let's think about it. Is Spence and Crawford bigger than Wilder Fury 3? I don't know. I think so. I think so. There's a lot of money there, okay? But at $89.99, right? Because that's $90. That's what people paid for that Fury and Wilder. But if they do it at that same price point, $67 million, right? That's the back end. That's a lot of money. So the back end for Spence's team at PBC was always going to be important, according to a source close to the negotiations, as they always anticipated becoming a big mainstream sports event. Now, when you think about that, this is where the inexperience on Crawford comes into play. Crawford was ready to jump into $25 million. And even for me, it's like $25 million is a lot of money. You want to go roll the dice, or you want to believe in yourself. To me, if you're going to believe in yourself to promote, to manage, to advise, to do everything on your own, why not believe in yourself, go into a fight with Spence to make sure that you guys can go out here and sell the numbers necessary. Do your work. You go out there, help promote. But I can't understand how a guy like Crawford, who has all this self-belief, wouldn't have a confidence that maybe they could at least make somewhat close to what Wilder and Fury made in the third fight. Because I definitely think Spence and Crawford is a much bigger fight than Fury Wilder 3. But that's just me. But that shows you the huge disconnect between Crawford's mentality and Errol Spence and the Errol Spence team. Crawford just wants that quick money. That's why he took that fight with a fantasy in. He wants that quick money. He doesn't want to, wait, plan things out, and maybe one shot and make more money in that one fight than he would have made over 4 or 5 or 6 fights. He just wants that quick money. And that's a mentality. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that's what I think his mentality is. He's had so many ups and downs over that top rank, his finances, looking at what the guys on PBC and everyone else was making compared to what he was making. And he's just like, he just wants to get it however he can. And that's a good thing because it makes sure he gets paid. But that's a bad thing because he's really not maximizing his true money earning potential, in my opinion. And he's risking losing, which will be detrimental to making anything with him and Spence, which I don't think is going to happen anyway. So Spence reacted to Crawford, his Instagram live video. It says, "Why it take you 2 weeks to say something?" So he claimed, now this is the stuff that everyone already knows about, man. The 3-belt welterweight champion said Crawford claimed that his concerns over having transparency on the revenues and expenses for the fight was the big issue that killed the negotiations. My side agreed to show him everything, is what Spence said. Then he challenged Crawford to post a draft contract from earlier this summer, which would show that his request had been granted. So I'm going to say this. Everything that Crawford asked for, he got. And Crawford's not saying he didn't receive it. I just think he just wanted to fight. He said he wanted to fight. He didn't want to wait over a year. I just think he felt like, hey, this thing is going to push out into next year. I'm going to do what I have to do. But he didn't tell them that. And that's the problem. Spence also referenced the mystery hedge fund offer Crawford made. He couldn't tell me where the source of money was from. Yeah, that's a problem. Even when I was looking at it, I was like, well, there was no conversation. Well, it sounds to me, because Crawford talks in code, that he still to this day doesn't want to disclose who's giving him the money. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And then he said some other stuff about Errol Spence's team. Crawford said he realized early in the negotiations that Errol Spence's team had some things in place and some roadblocks in place that was going to prevent him and Spence from fighting. But he won't say what those things were. What things were in place, what roadblocks were there that was going to prevent the fight between you and Spence, and that his team has his best interests in mind and he can't fault them for that. That's cool. But my thing is, if you're going to come out and say Al Heyman's mom was sick, you're going to say Spence was out of country with his kids on vacation, why can't you come and say the things that were precluding the fight from happening? Why can't you say who was going to put up that money? That to me, it only makes sense. I mean, if you're gonna be Al Capone, go all the way. That's how I see it. Go all the way. You can't go halfway. And then get on Twitter wanting to fight people because everyone's making fun of you. This dude is a clown, Crawford wrote to Spence, adding that he felt his opponent's team was trying to drag the negotiations out, which is why he took the alternative deal from BLK Prime to fight Evanesian. You see, this dragging things out, Spence's team, from what it sounds like, it sounds fair. And Espinoza even said everything they were working on. There are guys coming out and saying, well, this is kind of what the road plan was, the roadmap. This is what we were working on. And, you know, we had no idea Crawford had lost interest and was doing something else. Crawford just said, you know what, I don't like what I'm seeing, I'm out of here. And I just don't think that's the right way to do business. You got to communicate and close the loop, and Crawford didn't do it. So where do they go from here? Well, we know Crawford's already fighting Evanesian on December 10th in Nebraska. It is what it is. Spence doesn't have an official matchup lined up, but he does have options. Well, we know for a fact that he's supposed to be fighting Thurman, but it sounds to me like Spence is trying to get out of that commitment to fight Thurman. I don't know if he'll be able to. The Stanley Unis is supposed to be fighting Virgil Ortiz. But, you know, you just never know with boxing. And when it comes to this welterweight division right now, who knows what's going to happen. But right now, Spence is definitely on track to be getting into with Thurman. Thurman's back training, so that's what's supposed to be happening. But I don't know. So as far as the Crawford and Spence fight, is that super fight dead? I'm going to say this, man. I think Crawford and Spence would still be interested in it, but those sanctioning bodies are involved now. Spence has mandatories. He's 3 belts. He has to fight. Guys don't want to step aside no more. Okay? And then Crawford, he's going to have to fight probably Ittis. So just trying to get back to the position they were in, it may not happen anytime soon or at all. And at the end of the day, it's Bud's fault. Now I'm not mad at him for that. He at the root cause of all of this falling apart, right, is Bud Crawford. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but if he wouldn't have took that Evanesian fight, at least from what it seems, it would have been, full steam ahead. But Crawford didn't want to be up. Crawford won. He doesn't want to be attached to anyone trying to manage or promote him. He wants to be his own man. He didn't want to be out the ring that long. He wants quick money, okay? And I feel that way because when you look at the fact that he took that $10 million, he wanted to just take that $25 million, wasn't even concerned about understanding the back end. He was talking about the fire stick and nobody buys pay-per-view anymore. I don't even think Crawford really knows just how big this fight is. I'm not saying they're going to sell 4.6 million views, pay-per-view sales. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, I think they'll do more than 300,000. And I think there's a lot of money to be made for Spence and Crawford, more than 25 million apiece. But 25 million apiece is a lot of money still. But people don't get excited about seeing these two fight. I just don't think it's going to happen. There was even talks about Crawford fighting on an undercard for Spence and somebody that they both had 2 tune-ups. But none of that's not even something to discuss anymore because it's all over. But that is pretty much it in a nutshell, man. The bottom line, you can kind of understand Crawford's position, but you also can understand the frustration from Spence and his team because they're like, at least let us know something. But it's just real unfortunate that Crawford's on social media and he keeps tweeting stuff and people are attacking him and people are pretty mean on there. They're pretty vicious. And it's real unfortunate, man. But where Crawford is messing up, where he just keeps saying, I don't blame myself for one portion of the fight not being made. And he said 100% of the blame is on Errol Spence's team. They had other plans and things in the way that stopped the fight from happening. Again, not being specific. Very, very vague. I left Top Rank to ensure I didn't have to accept roadblocks or wait around to make fights. Right now, I don't feel I need to be tied down to a promotional company unless it's worth my time. All fighters should jump ship from promotional companies at a certain point. Earl's team wants to put him in the best position for his career. Fighting me wasn't a wise career move for the big fish. Those are Terrence Crawford's words, man. And if you just read that, that tells you the mind frame of Terrence Crawford. And a person with that kind of mind frame, they're not going to want to sit around and wait and understand the big picture and what the guys at Showtime were trying to do to build this into a massive, massive event, which is what the fight is. But just what I posted here, those are his words that I took from different interviews that he did. Those are his words. That's not my words. That's things that he said. And just listening to him, I think no matter what he does, he's working with guys like BLK Prime. If this deal works out with him, he's going to keep riding that wave. He's not going to come back around and mess with anyone else because he doesn't have to deal with the BS. But if he has to sit down and work with promoters and stuff like that, Crawford ain't never going to make no big fights. He's just not. There's no trust there, and he just doesn't want to wait around. He wants to be active, and if he can go make $10 million a fight 3-4 times a year against, whatever, man, whether it's a big-name fighter or a no-name fighter, he's going to do that. And it is what it is, man. But y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, people from all 7 continents. Long video, I apologize, but it is what it is. I'm in the breeze.